Welcome to Someone's Daughter Polling Mate, an initiative by the Roadshow Club of University of Sri Tirupura. This project stands for every woman who's ever felt pressure to fit in, stay quiet, or please smile, reminding us that she is not just someone's daughter, but someone with truth, courage, and voice. In this episode, we explore what it means to say in a real world that often rewards perfection. Joining us is Ms. Yasuri Karunaratna, lawyer, economist, filmmaker, and the co-founder of Rage, a platform that challenges societal norms and celebrates unfiltered voices. Hello, Ms. Yasu. Thank you so much for being here, and let's begin with your journey. You worked across law, economics, and media. What experiences have shaped your confidence and authenticity?
Hi, Marushi. It's nice to see you and talk to you on this podcast. So one thing I believe, because I work in very many areas, economics, law, and working with Rage, I work with many students and lecturers. So one thing that has shaped my confidence is that I put myself in various situations that are out of my comfort zone. And one, even coming for this podcast is something very out of my comfort zone, really. I don't get on camera much. I don't put myself out there much. Uh, but sometimes you have to do it because you want to make a change or do certain things in the areas that you're passionate about. So putting yourself like outside your comfort zone really does enhance your confidence. So I believe that's what has made me confident throughout the years. So and thanks for inviting me here. So it's also another step in building my own confidence. So thanks, Marushi.
Yes, I think you were also with nerves at the beginning of this, the beginning before we started. But I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what sort of pushes you forward to fight for a cause like you're really passionate about. So, and because you need to do the work yourself to get before you start working for the community, I think that's a good message that we send out to our audience as well. So, as for the second question, so social media often pushes you towards perfection. How do you personally navigate the space without letting it define your work?
Um, so as I said before, I don't really you won't see me around social media. I mean, no one would hardly know me. But because of Rage and its platform, we do put out quite a few content posts. We put our faces out there. And when major news incidents happen with regards to ragging or gender-based violence or cyberbullying, we do have to put ourselves out there. And we uh, then we do, like, especially me, when I edit a post or see the content, what goes into it, I do strive for somewhat of perfection. But as I had been working in this area of social justice, I realized it's better to just put your message out there. If you feel it's the correct message to put out there and you feel it's valuable for the community, I believe that, it's no use you are trying to make things perfect, trying to make you look perfect in the video or your content to be like exactly if all the words being, on spellings being correct, there are translations, the Sinhala and the Tamil and the English, everything being perfect. Sometimes it kind of the message gets diluted or sometimes the message gets really late. And especially when you work in an area like mine or like my organization, we have to be really fast. So perfection is now kind of out of the window for me. I try my best to do things soon, and because we handle cases which are free pro bono, we can't sit around the, oh, my claim needs to be perfect. The message that goes in the news needs to be perfect. We just try to send the message out and try to do some sort of justice, because perfect justice takes a long time, but a little bit of justice is something. So that is my message for that question, actually.
Yes, I think that's a very good insight as well, because again, if we take the time to perfect everything, including ourselves, that will sort of delay the area that we're trying to focus on, and it will also sort of maybe delay a lot of justice that could have been served in that time as well. So The third question being, so you wear many hats as a lawyer, as an advocate, and also as a creator. How do you find the balance between ambition and mental well-being? How do you balance it all? Because I know that's a lot of work to be working on cases and then again to shift your normal daily self and daily lifestyle. How do you sort of balance between the two?
Uh, I think I've been getting that question a lot in my workplace, in Rage, and everywhere actually in my family. So it's really not easy. I think practice kind of take makes it perfect. So so when I was a undergrad, I was actually balancing 2 degrees. I was doing law and economics, and I was also doing extracurriculars. I was also part of my own road trial. And I did sports and I did various things while being at university. And I believe something I learned from my school actually was I think it's good to have a balance of doing a lot of things. It does then you have a chance to pursue different types of passions and know exactly where your passion is going towards. And as women, I believe women actually wear many hats. They use so many things. I mean, I don't have children of my own, but like I can't like mothers, especially they do so many things. They work, they take care of the house, they take care of their children, take care of their spouses, their parents, and then like they have so much mental load. And I believe now society is also changing where the mental load is being more streamlined. And the thing is, going back to your question, like how do I balance everything with mental well-being? So the thing is, it's really difficult, yeah, because I have 2 jobs actually. I'm a litigator, I'm a commercial and banking lawyer, plus I am an economist at the Asian Development Bank, a consultant there, and I'm the co-founder of Rage. So it's a lot. It's like it's a bit of a mouthful. But the way I balance it or try and balance it is because I have a very good support system. I'm a really good family to a kind of healthy when things are very difficult. Even my husband is great. I mean, he's also the co-founder of Wave. And also, I think my friends, like I think with all this work I do, I need a lot of downtime, like just to hang out with friends, even just go for a drink or a coffee, just to decompress a bit. And I believe because I'm talking to I believe undergraduate students mainly. So you guys must be pretty stressed, right? Like and it says figuring out your life. So I believe it's really good when you get those breaks, decompress, take a break, go out with friends, and also make an effort to make friends and have those connections with family. Because when you're an undergrad, you keep thinking, oh, my whole I need to do my studies well, then I need to do a job get, and you keep going forward. But I think you need to build those connections with your friends and family because that's important. When you get old or when you feel lonely or sad, you're not going to go to your books, right, or to your job and be like, oh, I'm going to get happy there. So building connections and relationships with friends and family, I think it's a huge priority for our mental well-being. So yeah, that's my take, sir.
I think that's also you do quite a lot for the community and for as your job as Party Rage, as a co-founder Rage, and as someone who has actually seen the work that you do and has been part of the work that you do. I think it's actually a huge impact that you're making for us undergraduates and the people as a whole as well. And I think something we can take from your advice, piece of advice that you shared, is to make the connections and to make new friends, and also stay in the loop with your friends, because along the way you sort of, when you try to focus on your studies and academics and on that, you tend to lose focus of everything else. That's important to you, like your friend, and that's something that's very important even when it comes to something like when you need someone to have your back, when you need someone, when something goes wrong and you need someone as your support system. That's the one thing that actually stays with you. So be it your girl gang, be it your guy gang, whatever it is, that's
That's sort of the core of your entire week.
So thank you for that. And moving on to one of our most important questions, focusing our attention on rage. It has become a space for eliminating harassment, ragging, and abuse, mainly at universities and around. As the co-founder, what sort of inspires you in create it, and what kind of impact have you seen so far?
So, the reason why I created it with my husband is also the co-founder. It's because we experienced ragging when we were undergraduates, and we believe there has to be some kind of organization or a space to do something about it, a sustainable organization. And when I left university, I did actually join academia as well as a lecturer at the economics department in my own faculty. And I believe like there's so much support actually, too many lecturers who were against ragging and harassment. And they also said, there should be something that exists, something tangible to kind of fall back on. And when I left university, I was thinking, and when I became a lawyer, actually, especially, I was thinking there has to be a space where, students can come to and find some kind of legal support if they face ragging or harassment. And harassment being cyberbullying or gender-based violence. And then I was thinking, and I still remember when I took my oaths as a lawyer, I was thinking, there's a whole like, when you take that oath, it's very important. You know that you are serving the country. You have to do some kind of justice to the country. Yet be fair by the people. It's a very important oath. And I was thinking to myself, God, I need to do something about this. Now I'm a lawyer. I'm an economist. Now I have some kind of putting in society. I have some kind of skill set that can actually help people and students. And then it slowly began. And then my husband also said, let's start something together. And we built it. So in 2023, we established it. And we only had like 2 or 3 volunteers, but now we have around 62 volunteers. Even Manushi is part of it. She has been helping us so much with our creative course, our content, which need to be very eye-catching for people so they could read the content and gain the knowledge and awareness. And we have about 21 lawyers. We have connections with the Marshals Union of all universities. And we have ties with lecturers, the UGC, the Attorney General's department. And so it's very like, it's now something. It has been established, but we have a long way to go. My real goal with Rage is that one day it doesn't exist. That means ragging and CSGPP, gender-based violence. But that is a very idealistic dream. But I wish one day that is actually my dream with Rage. That my goal, even our mission, I would say. So, did I answer all the questions in that?
Yeah, you pretty much did. You did. You explained it. Yes. What kind of impact can you see so far? Like, what kind of impact has Rage made through the years?
So one big thing we do is the awareness sessions in local universities and for staff and for marshals. So when we do those awareness sessions, so what we do there is we simplify the laws against ragging, sexual harassment, and cyberbullying, and we tell students, this is what you should do. These are the processes in place in your own university who you can talk to. How do you make a complaint? So we simplify all of those things, and we also reiterate those processes to lecturers and staff and marshals in universities, so they also remember these processes exist, because I know lecturers are not going to be lawyers, and it's also not fair to them to always keep remembering everything. So that's where Rage comes in, and it's just a facilitator to remind and simplify. But we also go a step beyond that. So we have done numerous awareness sessions. So recently we did one in the University of California, and that was a whole big session. And now we are planning to do one in the University of Colombo. And we have done so many already. Even in Japuravi last year, I came and visited, and we have done in Southeastern University, and even Colombo I've gone to twice, but again I'm going to Colombo as well. So awareness sessions is, I believe, there's a big impact there because we each students and we get a lot of feedback when they thank us, saying thank you so much for telling this process even exists, because we didn't know that we could make a complaint in such a way. So beyond that, we also give pro bono legal support to students who face ragging, sexual harassment, and database violence. And we have done quite a few cases, and the biggest one we're doing right now is the case of Mr. Chadid Dilshan, who tragically took his life because of ragging on 29th of April. So we reached out to his parents. We sent a letter actually saying, these are the legal processes you can take. And they actually contacted us and they asked, Jake, would you like to take up this case with us? And we were like, of course, we would love to help and do anything we can. So that case is actually coming up in the Supreme Court on the 18th of November. And we have put a lot of processes in our prayer. So a prayer means what we ask the court, what we want, that where we can actually eradicate ragging and harassment in universities. And we have so much support. So many vice chancellors are in support with us, and the Attorney General, the UTC. So we have a very good network there. Um, and also we are having, so Vanushi knows what this is. We are having something called Coffee Chat, and which we are doing in collaboration with a bunch of organizations, the Girl Guides, the EU, the UN, and where we are kind of training leaders for peace and harmony, and leaders in who are undergraduate students who have demonstrated skills where they are, showcasing skills of peace and harmony, uh, or any kind of leader. So we kind of train them and instill those values in there, and you get a certificate and all that. So the application is also, if anyone has specific. So we are having that 8 of the month. Vicky.
So thank you, Vityasu. Moving on to our final question. There are many young students, undergraduates in Yemen, listening who feel lost in comparison or afraid to be themselves. What's one mindset shift or habit that helped you reclaim your voice? And what's one message that you would like to share with every listener who has been with us so far?
So this might sound a bit odd, but I mean, I think a lot of students also might have heard this, that, Earth is just a dot on a dot on a dot, the whole universe, and when you think of us, we are really nothing. Yeah, so I think when I think, especially because I do so many things that are very outside most people's comfort zone, I keep thinking how we are very insignificant. So might as well just do whatever the hell you want contrary, and which you think is good. If you think, your action will, help society or do something good for society, just think, actually, and you're scared, do it. You put a post about yourself, make a video about yourself, write to the newspaper, write to the Chief Justice, this bad incident is happening. It's scary, right? Like you have all those inhibitions, what will my friends say, what will my parents say, what will this person say, blah, blah, blah. So I think about it all the time, it really doesn't matter, we are really nothing in this universe. And also, you have one light, right? So I'm a Buddhist, but like, I know that there might maybe a rebirth or whatever. But even if there is, like this life, you might not remember it, right? So you have one life, and you're really nothing in this universe. So might as well do what you want to do, and just always believe in yourself. Also, like something I really have is that self belief that everything will be okay. It's something that my grandfather always says that things are really bad. Also, that don't worry. Later on, it'll be okay. Right now, it'll be difficult, but later on, everything will be fine. But I mean, for women also, it's not easy. I mean, we have faced so many challenges right now. We are in somewhat of a okay situation. But I mean, because of our predecessors who have fought that, fought for rights and all that, and it's still not easy. Even in litigation, we face so many issues as women and all that. But I mean, still, I think to myself, always have that self belief and remember that you're not you're not insignificant. You are really nothing. So might as well just do good. Don't do bad. I know that. But do what you believe is good and always believe in yourself. I think always have that, like even if people don't have your back, because when you keep putting yourself out there, people are going to be critical, and fair enough, you're out, like you're going out of your comfort zone, because and you have to also grow quite a bit of a thick skin, and which is not easy also, because people are going to criticize, people are going to be like, oh, you're doing this because you want that, you're doing that because you want this, not because you truly believe in the cause of things. So okay, 3 things: believe in yourself, grow thick skin, which is not easy. You grow thick skin by putting yourself out of your comfort zone. And the third thing is you're not significant. It doesn't really matter. Also in dating. So yeah, that's my 3 spin is it.
So thank you, Ms. Yastu, for that insightful conversation. You reminding us that authenticity isn't just about being seen. It's about being real even when it's hard. Like you said, great thick skin and putting yourself out there. So to everyone listening, your voice matters. Your truth matters. And as a part of someone's daughter, we invite you to show up just as you are. Imperfect, powerful, and worthy. Stay tuned for our next episode of Someone's Daughter, Volume 8. We'll continue to amplify voices and challenge norms and inspire change. Thank you.